This is a lesson on solving a two-step inequality with fractional coefficient. So here's an example of a two-step inequality. So basically, a two-step inequality means that you can solve this inequality in two steps. Now, it has a fractional coefficient. That means that when you look at the coefficient of the variable, in this case the variable is x, the coefficient of that variable is 7/3. And notice that 7/3 is a fraction. It's written as a fraction. So that's a fractional coefficient. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this inequality. And remember, it's called a two-step inequality. Basically, you can solve this in two steps. So the first thing you want to do when solving a two-step inequality or any equation or inequality is to try and get the variable term by itself. So right now, if you notice, I'm adding 2 to this variable term that I'm circling, and the opposite of adding 2 is to subtract 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides of this inequality. Now the inequality is a less than inequality. And then once you do that, the next step is to combine like terms. So when I add 2 and a negative 2, I get 0. And so I have 7/3 x is less than, and then 8 subtract 2 is 6. All right, now the next step, remember two-step, right? So there's my first step, and I'm about to do my second step. So the second step is to get the variable x by itself. Well, remember, one way to get this, you want this to be a coefficient of 1, okay? And so one way to get this to be a coefficient of 1 is to use a previous lesson that you learned, which was the multiplicative property of an inequality. And so basically, if I want this to be a coefficient of 1, then I am going to, and we'll go ahead and rewrite this over, I am going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of this coefficient. And so the reciprocal of 7/3 is 3/7. So you can multiply both sides by 3/7. And then I want you to notice that you can think of this in two ways right here that I'm circling. 3 times 7 is 21. 7 times 3 is 21, right? And then 21 divided by 21 is 1. And remember, you want this to be 1. You want this right here to be a product of 1. And you can also, that's also true because these 3's divide out and these 7's divide out. And then 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. And you get this product to be 1. And so 1 times x is x. It's less than. And over here, it's very helpful to think of 6 as 6 divided by 1. And so you get 6 times 3, multiply the numerators together. So notice I'm multiplying two fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply the numerators together. 6 times 3 is 18. And then 1 times 7 is 7. And that's it. And then reduce if you can. I cannot reduce this. But if I want to, I can rewrite 18/7 as a mixed number because 18/7 is an improper fraction. So 7 into 18 will go 2 times. 7 times 2 is 14 with the remainder of 4. So I get 2 and 4/7. So I can write this like this, or you can say x is less than 2 and 4/7. Okay? So either one of those is correct. So that's a two-step equation. All right, so that's number one. Now that's more of the easy kind right here. So we can look at some more examples where it gets a little tricky, but you should still be able to do these without any difficulty. So let's look at number 2. So number 2, I have this inequality. I have 3 minus 6/5 x is greater than 11. So 3 minus 6/5 x is greater than 11. All right, so remember I'm trying to get this variable term by itself. So you see I have a 3 here, right? So I want to bring this 3 to the other side. So notice this is a positive 3. Now before I begin, I want you to notice something. I'm hoping that you all see this. That you see this left-hand side here, 3 minus 6/5 x. I'm hoping you see that you can also write this. So this can be written as, I can put the x term first, but remember that's a negative 6/5 x. So negative 6/5 x and then plus 3. So that's a positive 3. So this plus this. So this right here is the same as this. Okay? And so some students prefer to think of this as this way, and that's fine. So if you want to rewrite it, you can. Just make sure you write it correctly. It has to be written like this. So this side is the same as this. And then right away, you notice that right now I'm adding 3, right? So the opposite is to subtract 3. And so 3 and a negative 3 is 0, combining like terms. And so I get negative 6/5 x is greater than, and 11 minus 3 is 8. All right, now, just like with the previous problem, you're trying to get x by itself. So you need this right here to be a coefficient of 1. So that's where we're going to use that multiplicative property. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over. And, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the reciprocal of this coefficient. And the reciprocal of negative 6/5 is a negative 5/6. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a negative 5/6, just like this. Okay? So the reciprocal of negative 6/5 is a negative 5 divided by 6. But what you do to one side, you do to the other. Now, one thing you got to remember is that whenever you multiply, remember this from a previous lesson, whenever you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality, inequality by a negative number, you must reverse the inequality symbol. You must reverse the inequality symbol. All right, so you notice that I multiply both sides. I multiply both sides by this negative number, right? And so this right here, this greater than, should become less than. All right. So whenever you multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you must reverse that inequality symbol. So greater than becomes less than. And that's very important to remember. All right, and so now what you to notice is that first of all, a negative times a negative is a positive. See that right here? The 6's divide out, the negative 5 or the 5's divide out, and you have negative 1 times a negative 1 is 1. See this right here? This whole thing right here is 1. And 1 times x is x. So I get x is less than. All right, now remember like we did in the previous problem, it's a good idea to write this as 8 divided by 1. And let's go off to the side because it's going to get a little messy right here. So let's go off to the side and rewrite what I see here. So 8 over 1 divided by negative 5/6. So negative 5/6. I can reduce the 8 and the 6, so let's go ahead and do that. They're both even, so they're both divisible by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And so I get 4. 4 over 1 is 4 times negative 5/3. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and then 1 times 3 is 3. So I get negative 20/3. Okay? And so that is your answer. Now, if you want to write this as a mixed number, remember how to write 20/3 as a mixed number. You're going to say 3 into 20. That's going to go 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18, with the remainder 2. So you can write this as x is less than negative 6 and 2/3. Negative 6 and 2/3. All right. So a couple of things you have to remember, or you have to remember whenever you multiply and divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you have to reverse that inequality symbol. All right. So notice when I had this inequality, but then I went ahead and multiplied both sides by negative, so I had to rewrite that greater than as a less than. Okay? All right, it's important for you to remember that. All right, so that's number 2. All right, number 3, let's suppose we had this. We had 8 is greater than or equal to 1/5 u plus 12. So 8 is greater than or equal to 1/5 u plus 12. Now, it just so happens that the variable expression is on the right-hand side, and that doesn't matter. It just happens to be on the right-hand side. And so let's go ahead and leave it like that, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I need to go ahead and get rid of this 12 because I want to get this variable expression by itself. So right now I'm adding 12. The opposite is to subtract 12. All right, and so 8 subtract 12 is -4, right? -4 is greater than or equal to 1/5 u. 12 minus 12 is 0. All right, just like we did a while ago, I need to get this coefficient right here to be a 1. So let me go ahead and rewrite this and space it out a little. So 1/4 is greater than or equal to, and then 1/5 u. So I put some space here. All right, so to get this coefficient to be a 1, remember you're going to multiply both sides of this inequality by the reciprocal of this coefficient. The reciprocal of 1/5 is 5 divided by 1, or just 5, right? So times 5 times 5. Y'all agree? Okay. Now remember, the whole point of multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of this coefficient is to get this right here to be a product of 1. And you see that's true because 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 5 one time. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So you get 1 times u is u. And then I'm going to put the greater than equal to symbol here. And then -4 times 5 is a -20. All right, and so that's your answer. Now, here's the problem with the way this looks. Most students, well, all students can visually see this on the number line. So they know where -20 is on the number line, and they know that they're going to shade in. If you were asked to graph, they would shade in every number to the left because it says less than. Okay, and this is the easy kind because x is on the left-hand side. But here the variable's on the right-hand side. So I want you to remember this. -20 is greater than or equal to u is the solution. But this also means, and that's important for you to see this, this also means, and if I put the variable u on the left-hand side, see right now it's on the right, correct? I'm going to get u is less than or equal to -20. So -20 is greater than or equal to u means when you go backwards, u is less than or equal to -20. All right, so it is important that you're able to see that these are equivalent. Those mean the same thing, okay? All right. All right, so that's number 3. All right, let's look at number 4. So number 4, we have this problem. We have -3 is less than or equal to -7 plus 1/3 w. So again, notice the variable expressions on the right-hand side of the inequality. That's fine. We can deal with that. But I want to remember you want to isolate this term right here. So you gotta somehow think about, well, how do I get rid of this -7? So notice to this term you're adding a -7. So if I want this to be 0 right here, I'm going to have to add 7 to both sides, just like that. Notice a -7 plus 7 is 0, and 0 plus 1/3 w is 1/3 w. And then the inequality symbols are less than or equal to. -3 plus 7 is 4. All right, so that's what I have. All right, so it's important you see how I went from here to here. So I added 7 to both sides. Notice this right here looks just like we did with this one. Okay, so now I want to get this to be w. So right now the product is the term is 1/3 times w. And so if I want this to be a coefficient of 1, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to leave some room here. I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. The reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 divided by 1, or 3. And so the 3's divide out, and so 1 times 1. So you want this to be a 1, right? You want this product right here to be a 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times w is w. The symbol is less than or equal to. And 4 times 3 is 12. So 12 is less than or equal to w. But you see how the variable's on the right-hand side? Let's go ahead and bring it on the left-hand side. So that means, this means the same as, or this is equivalent to, and then let's write it backwards. W is going to be greater than or equal to 12. So this and this mean the same thing. So 12 is the smallest number. 12 less than or equal to W means that 12 is the smallest number. Or it also means that this right here means that W has to be greater than or equal to 12. All right, so that's number 4. Not difficult at all, right? Very simple process, a very simple process. All right, let's look at number 5. So number 5, we have negative 15 minus 8 fifths y. Let me put write it like this: negative 8y divided by 5 is greater than or equal to negative 2. All right, so that's what I have. Now, remember, you want to isolate this variable term right here. So you want to get rid of this negative 15 first. So you want this to be a 0. And so to get that to be a 0, you're going to look at its opposite. So you're going to add the opposite to both sides. So the opposite of negative 15 is a positive 15. So you're going to add 15 to both sides. Notice what you do to one side, you do to the other. Once, okay? Negative 15 plus 15 is 0. And so you get 0 minus 8y divided by 5, just like this, all right, is greater than, and then negative 2 and 15 is 13. Okay, now, here's the next thing you may want to do. Whenever you see something like this where you have that variable in the numerator, you may want to rewrite, and I want you to see this, I'm hoping you see this, that negative 8y divided by 5 means the same thing as negative 8 fifths y. Okay? So that and that is the same thing. So it's very helpful sometimes to rewrite this expression looks like this as the coefficient times the variable. And so you get negative 8 fifths y is greater than 13. All right, now at this point, you're trying to get y by itself. So you're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. So using a multiplicative property. So you multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. All right, but remember, see, that's negative, right? All right, so remember, whenever you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you must reverse the inequality symbol. So when I come here and I multiply both sides, just like this, multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. So the reciprocal of negative 8 fifths is a negative 5/8, just like this, negative 5/8. I got to remember, see, I multiply both sides by negative number, right? So I got to remember that I got to change this greater than to less than. All right? And so notice this right here, if you're doing this correctly, this right here should now be a product of 1. So notice the 5's divide out, the 8's divide out, and you have a negative 1 times a negative 1, which is 1. And 1 times y, see, that's a y. 1 times y is y. So y is less than, make sure you write the correct symbol, because remember, you multiply both sides by a negative number. So y is less than. All right, so let's look at this right here. So do y'all agree that this right here is the same thing as saying 13 over 1 times negative 5/8? Now, I cannot reduce, so I'm just going to go ahead and multiply. 13 times a negative 5, 13 times a negative 5 will give me a negative 65, right? And then divided by, and then 1 times 8 is 8. So y is less than a negative 65 divided by 8. All right, and so there's your answer. And notice that I cannot reduce negative 65 divided by 8 or negative 65/8, but if I want to, I can change that to a mixed number. So 8 into 65. So 8 will go into 65 8 whole times. 8 times 8 is 64 with the remainder 1. So I can rewrite this as y is less than 8 and 1/8. Negative 8 and 1/8. All right, so that's number 5. All right, but remember, when you multiply both sides or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you have to reverse that inequality symbol. So don't forget to do that. All right, number 6. So let's look at number 6. So number 6, we have this inequality. So we have negative 4 is less than negative 7u divided by 3 minus 12. All right, now again, it just so happens that the variable's on the right-hand side, so remember how to deal with that at some point. But first of all, let's go ahead and get rid of that minus 12 right here. So I'm subtracting 12. So I need this to be a 0, so you can do the opposite. So subtracting 12, you're going to add 12 to both sides. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Once here, once here. Negative 4 plus 12 is 8. So I get 8 is less than, this is 0. Negative 12 and its opposite add up to be 0. And you get negative 7u divided by 3. Now remember how we talked about earlier. So I want you to remember that negative 7u divided by 3 means the same thing as negative 7/3 times u. So it helps sometimes to write it as a coefficient times the variable. So this becomes 8 is less than negative 7/3 times u. All right, and so now one more step and we're done. So look at the coefficient of u. The coefficient of u is a negative 7/3. I want this to be a 1. So to get that to be a 1, I'm going to have to multiply both sides. Let me go ahead and rewrite this over so I can leave some space here. That's a 7, negative 7. All right, so I'm going to multiply both sides by by the reciprocal of the coefficient. So the reciprocal of negative 7/3 is a negative 3/7. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other, right? Now, something else you got to remember, multiply both sides by a negative number, right? So this less than has got to now become greater than. So don't forget to do that. And so now, notice that on this right here, you have negative 3/7 times 8 divided by 1. I cannot reduce, so negative 3 times 8 is a negative 24. 7 times 1 is 7. So I get negative 24/7 is greater than, and if you're doing this right, if you're doing this correctly, this product should be a 1. And notice, and you can think of it this way as well, negative 3 times a negative 7 is a positive 21. The denominators, 7 times 3 is 21. 21 divided by 21 is 1. Or you can just reduce. The 7s divide out, the 3's divide out, and you have a negative 1 times a negative 1 is 1. And 1 times u is u. But remember, in a previous problem, I need for you to recognize that this can be written, so you can always put u on the left-hand side. So this is equivalent to, and you're going to say u. So negative 24/7 is greater than u, means u is less than negative 24/7. Okay? All right. All right, let's do one more. So let's look at number 7. All right, so number 7. So in 7, you have negative 5/9 minus 3 is less than or equal to negative 8. Okay, so I need to isolate that variable term. So I need to think about how to get rid of that subtract 3. We'll always do the opposite. The opposite of subtracting 3 is to add 3. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And when I do that, the negative 3 and the positive 3 add up to be 0. And so I get negative 5/9 and 0 is a negative 5/9. So that's negative 5/9 is less than or equal to, and the negative 8 and a positive 3 is a negative 5, right? Okay, now notice I'm trying to get x by itself. So I need this coefficient right here to be a 1. To get that coefficient to be a 1, I just rewrote this and put some space here. to get that coefficient right here to be a 1, I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the coefficient. The reciprocal of negative 5/9 is a negative 9/5, just like this. Okay? And so if you're doing this correctly, this product has to be a 1. And so always verify that's a 1. You can multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, and they should both be the same number. Negative 9 times a negative 5 is 45, right? 5 times 9 is 45. 45 divided by 45 is 1. Or you can reduce. The 9's divide out, the 5's divide out. You have a negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. 1 times x is x. But remember, I multiply both sides by a negative number, right? So I got to cross this out because that's not a true statement. This less than or greater than has to be what? Greater than or equal to. All right, so x is going to be greater than or equal to. And then let's go off to the side and figure out what this is. Notice that negative 5, I can write as negative 5 divided by 1 times a negative 9/5. The 5's divide out, right? And negative 1 times a negative 9 is a positive 9. And so x is greater than or equal to 9. That's your solution. All right. So remember, whenever you multiply both sides by a negative number, you've got to reverse this inequality statement, just like I did. All right. Okay. So that is solving a two-step inequality with fractional coefficients. So you're going to perform some steps here to find the solutions to the original inequality. So the solutions to this original inequality will be any number that's less than 2 4/7 or less than 18/7. And the same thing for the one we just did. The solution to this original inequality right here would be any value of u that's less than negative 24/7. Okay? All right, so that is the lesson on solving a two-step inequality with fractional coefficients.